Well, folks, welcome back to Rimshots with Sean, brought to you by Barstools and Bandtalk. I don't have it, you can't see it, but I like to say I'm not a corporate seller as I'm sponsored by Molson Canadian and Coors Light, but I kind of am. They pay the bills. Mr. Greg Chaisson, all the way from...
I'm sponsored by Joe Montana.
God love you, man. I'm trying to focus on what you're saying as I'm seeing that jersey over your shoulder. That's incredible. So, you're in sunny Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah.
You're running a music store out there. I'm loving the posts. You guys have some really cool stuff. How long have you been doing that?
Well, I've been running this store this time since October of 2015. The original owner passed away. Him and I went way back, played in bands together. So when he died, his widow asked me if I would run the store. Apparently it was in his will that if something happened to him, he wanted me to take the store and run it. So I wasn't planning on doing anything like that. I was just going to go back to teaching little kids playing baseball sometime that spring, the next year, the spring. But I was really good friends with the family. So I said, yeah, I'll do it. So I've been doing it now since 6.5 years. But I had worked there 3 other times. So I've been there probably almost 20 years total. I worked there before I went to LA to do the music thing in 82. And then when I got back in 96, I worked there for about 5 years then too.
All right. So it's time to cover, we got to talk about the elephant in the room. So this little band that was spawned out of, a young Mr. Jake Ely leaves Ozzy Osbourne, and everybody's going, what the heck is he going to put together? And out comes this band, Badlands. And I will say, Greg, I may possibly owe you some more royalty money because the front cover of the first album,
yeah,
a band that I was in, we almost copied it to a T. There was 5 of us. But if I'll send you the picture and you'll laugh. You're going to be like, you bastard, you owe me money. But that album came out. Safe to say, it punched everybody in the face. It was raw. There wasn't a lot of effects on it. It wasn't overproduced. It was just like plug in, go. That's an album. Now, the second album, great too, but the focus on the first album, everybody that I talk to that's a musician always cites that it should have sold 10 billion albums because every musician I talk to talks about that record.
I had Ray not come down with pneumonia and our tour had to end it when it did, because we finished touring like, what would that have been, in 89 at Christmas time. And then we were supposed to go back out. The rumor was with AC/DC by February, but Ray got pneumonia. And so we were kind of forced to take a break. And then the record company decided that we should write a second record. So in a perfect world, we would have went out on the road with AC/DC. We would have released High Wire as the next single. Then we might have released Seasons at some point. And who knows what would have happened. I know for a fact that was never a concern of Jake's or mine, how many records we were going to sell. We were always kind of on the thought process that it'll do what it does and we won't put a lot of pressure on ourselves like, hey, this has to go platinum. We were at odds with the record company right out of the box. So there was a lot of acrimony when the record came out and what they wanted us to do versus what we were willing to do. But we got to do a lot of shows. We played in front of a lot of people, and I still hear from a lot of those people, to this day. So I'm proud of that record, and I thought everyone did a great job on it. And it's kind of like that first Montrose album. It's kind of one of the things that kind of goes along. If Atlantic would ever re-release the record, which they never will, I don't think, it would go gold in probably a day because it's sitting at about 485,000 copies.
Wow. And you know what? That is a very good analogy because I heard a lot. What was it? I think Classic Rewind played a bunch of that album today on Sirius XM. Very good. Almost a very similar sound in terms of the rawness and the. Do you remember how that album was made? Did you guys do it live off the floor? Like, did you remember how that whole thing was done?
You mean our record?
Yeah.
Our record was weird. We went into a studio. We had all these songs. We had demoed about 30 songs. We went into a studio in LA called One on One, a really good studio. And we put down, I don't know, a dozen tracks. And then Atlantic decided that they didn't hear a hit song in there. So they pulled us out of the studio there, and they flew Jake and Ray to New York to write a hit song. And so while they were there, they used a different bass player and drummer just for rehearsing. I don't even know who they were. Jake never told me. I didn't really care. I've never heard any demos. I never heard any demos from that, so I don't know what anyone did. But while they were in New York, they wrote High Wire, Winter's Call, I believe, and I believe they wrote a little something, Dreams in the Dark.
Yeah.
So when we got there, when Eric and I got there, the guy that was producing us and managing us at the time said, "Hey, you want to hear these demos?" No, Eric and I didn't want to hear it. We just wanted to do our own thing, which we did. And the rest is kind of history. So the second half of the record, we recorded in probably another 6 or 8 songs. And I think maybe 3 of them made the record, and it might have been maybe a 4th one. I can't remember right off the top of my head. But we recorded at Record Plant in New York City, which is no longer there. So it's a great place to be, because we recorded in the same room on the same board that Mountain recorded Climbing and Nantucket Sleigh Ride on. So Jake and I are both big Mountain freaks. So we were, check out the vibes in this room. It's pretty cool.
And it's funny you say they replaced the bass player and the drummer. And I mean, on that album, you get a legendary rhythm section in yourself and Eric Singer. I mean, he's always been a huge favorite of mine. And again, back to the rawness of that album. I mean, you're sitting there going, where are the effects? But you don't need the effects. To me, it just has this live off the floor vibe that at any second the whole thing could fall apart. But it's just so precisely tight that it's just, in my mind, it's one of those kind of can't miss records that for my generation was important that came out. Well,
I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I mean, it was kind of, again, lightning in a bottle. Mm-hmm. But the weird part about that lightning in the bottle, it's done in 2 separate studios. We recorded in the fall, maybe up October, November in LA at One on One. And then Jake and Ray went to New York in December, and Eric and I showed up in January, like right after New Year's. And we managed to capture lightning in a bottle a second time, all the way on the other side of the country. So it was one of those kind of weird things. It was probably like it was meant to be. I think Ray was the best singer of his generation.
No question.
Jake's my favorite guitar player ever, which is totally cool to get to play with your favorite guitar player ever and a singer like Ray. And I thought Eric's playing on that drummer on that record is stellar. I mean, when we started auditioning drummers, one of the songs we would audition drummers for when we replaced Eric was Devil Stomp, and no one could play it the way Eric played it. And he wrote all those drum parts. Eric writes great drum parts. They're very precise. Eric's meter is impeccable. Mm-hmm. His choice of fills and groove is like second to none. It was a great experience to be around him. And funny story is, when I first started playing with Eric, and it's kind of well known, him and I didn't get along. And I would say, let's work out some rhythm parts. And he'd say, no, I don't pay any attention to the bass player. I just follow the guitar player. And then I'll just figure out my parts. And if you want to try to play to them, go ahead. So I was like, what? I'd never heard that before. Right. Well, I found out later that a lot of drummers play with the guitar player, and the bass player kind of follows along. So once Eric kind of got his stuff the way he wanted it, I tailor-made my parts to fit his parts in between him and Jake. And we never worked out anything together, Eric and I. We never sat down and rehearsed, just him and I, and talked about anything. He played to Jake. I played to him. I tried to weave my way in between him and Jake, and it worked out perfect. And now when I'm recording, I kind of let the drummer do what he wants. And then I do the same thing, even in Atomic Kings. That's how I do it. It works really good because you're not trying to tailor make it to a song. You're tailor making it to the groove and the vibe of who's ever wrote the part. In this case, Jake.
Absolutely. And I mean, you're going to agree. Every drummer you play with has a little bit of a different vibe and a different feel. So Eric leaves. you get somebody new for that second album. How did your approach to the band, did it change at all? Were you just you? How did you take that on?
Well, the thing about getting Jeff Martin was simple. I brought him in, I recommended him, and he came and auditioned. But I've known Jeff since 1974. So we started playing in bands together in 1974 all the way to like almost 1980. And Jeff's a different drummer than Eric is. Jeff is kind of super fast hands, really crazy parts, trying to jam stuff in there and trying to do this really kind of crazy. Ian Pace meets Mitch Mitchell meets Bobby Caldwell from Captain Beyond, three of my favorite drummers. And Jeff kind of tailor-made his parts that way. Well, I did the same thing. I just said, play with Jake. I'll follow you. But the difference was I'd played with Jeff so many times when we were younger, that when he would go to do something, I would know exactly where he was going. Even though he has this huge library of chops and rhythms and grooves, I played with him so long, I knew where he was going, and it was super easy, where Eric was a little more difficult because I had never played with him before.
Right.
So I always equate Eric as like this really nice luxury car just cruising down the freeway, and it's just like you're looking at the scenery and it's great. And Jeff's like this hot rod sports car coming down some crazy mountain road that's switchbacking all over the place, and there's no guardrails, and you could go off the edge of a cliff any moment and crash and burn, but you never do. It's pretty crazy, but it's pretty damn exciting at the same time. So I liked playing with both of them. I've probably done, 10 records with Jeff since that second Badlands record. And just a lot of fun to be around. He's a lot of fun to play with. He's got a weird sense of humor. And I think probably if we were going to replace Eric, Jeff was the perfect guy, because his playing was so much different than what was going on in LA at the time. Right. You got a lot of Tommy Lee and Tommy Aldridge clones. Right. Jeff was something completely different, this kind of Ian Pace, Bonham Mitchell guy. And that fit in really good with where we wanted to go. Jeff was the right drummer for where the material progressed on Dusk and before that, Voodoo Highway.
And something that I omitted so far, in terms of your resume. So for anybody that's going, oh, geez, Greg just wound up Badlands. That was where he came out of nowhere and he was in Badlands. I mean, tell the folks that wouldn't be in the know. I mean, you were at it for a while before that opportunity came about.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I started playing in 1971. Badlands got a record deal in 1988. So I was already in my 30s. And we had moved to LA. Me and my girlfriend, now my wife, had moved to LA in the 80s, specifically for the music business. So I moved there in 82. She followed me in January of 83. And I was there to make it. Well, the first band I was ever in that actually played out, I mean, I was in Rap for a few minutes, but I got pneumonia and had to leave, and they got a different bass player, and then they ended up getting Juan back and blah, 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 blah. But I was in Steeler with Ron Keel, and it was the biggest on-sign band in town. I mean, we played all the best venues in LA at the time, or in the LA area. We played every weekend. We would go up the coast and play the coast of California. We would play in Bakersfield and Fresno and San Francisco and Oakland and all that stuff. We did shows with YNT. So, it looked like it was going to happen. But for some reason, we couldn't get a record deal. I mean, we had the songs. Ron was a good writer, still is. I wrote a lot of stuff. I have songs on those first 3 Keel records that I co-wrote with Ron, but we couldn't get a deal. So Ron was going to go join Black Sabbath. That was the plan. And I was going to join the Michael Schenker group. Well, Black Sabbath didn't happen for Ron. Michael Schenker group didn't happen for me. Schenker had some problems and kind of got off the grid for a bit. And by the time he got back on, I was not in the loop anymore. And then Ron put together Keel. So, I then struggled in LA. I played in some popular bands. Most notably, I played in a band called Tariff with Joe Holmes, who ended up being in David Lee Roth's band and Ozzy's band. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, I was still on the map, but it just wasn't happening. And I was getting older and more frustrated. And, you know, I wasn't in my 20s anymore like a lot of these guys were. And so my wife and I would go to the pier every New Year's, and she would talk me out of moving back to Arizona. I'd say, I want to move back to Arizona. It's not going to happen. And she'd say, no, give it one more year. And she was smart enough to know that if I didn't stick it out, that I would probably be a miserable POS, and she'd have to deal with it for the rest of it. You know, I mean, there were a lot of great gigs. I auditioned for Ozzy, which is how I met Jake. Yep. And we started a friendship that, you know, we maintain to this day. And so it wasn't like it wasn't like nothing was happening. It just wasn't happening the way I wanted it or as quick as I wanted. My brother was in Kiel. They were doing world tours. They were putting records out. I'm sitting there playing at the, I'm playing at the Roxy. And, you know, he's playing at Irvine Meadows.
Well, so, I want to ask you about that, Greg, and you brought it up, and I wasn't going to, but I have a younger brother who he was a singer in bands and stuff, and, you know, there's always that competition factor. Was that, on the one hand, you're probably happy for him, but on the other hand, you're going like, what the heck? I put in the time, and, like, did you have that feeling at the time when it was going on?
Well, I kind of introduced Kenny and Ron. Kenny had only been playing about a year and a half when he got in Kiel. So he's been playing a year and a half, and he's got a record deal. And I've been playing, I don't know, at that point, 13 years or 12 years, and I don't have anything. I don't have a pot to piss in. So I was very happy for Kenny, and because he didn't have to struggle for it to get there. I mean, playing in a band like Kiel, there were some struggles because they never really did what everyone thought was going to happen. Everyone thought they were going to be like Great White or like Dokken or like Rat, and that just didn't happen. They never sold those kind of numbers, and they certainly had a lot of good tours to make that happen. It just didn't. And so Kenny was struggling with that. They weren't making a lot of money. I was happy that he was, you know, going on these tours. He played at Madison Square Garden and the Texas Jam. I never played any of those places, and so was thrilled about that. It was like I was happy he was successful. I just wanted to be successful too. So it wasn't like there was any competition between he and I. He developed into the bass player he is. I was already that kind of bass player because I'd been playing so long before that. So, and then Todd was coming up with his band. So don't mind the water. It's the one constant companion from having tongue cancer is you have to drink a lot of water.
Always dry. Well, and I mean, you know, and I don't want to use the term bide at your time, but you kept working, and you know, I guess we can agree. Badlands probably was a band that should have been a lot bigger than they were.
I agree.
But I'm gonna say that probably everybody that you come across cites them as a band in that era that was way up there in terms of influence, in terms of songs, in terms of everything. I mean, run it down. You had you and Eric Singer on that first album, and then Jeff and you on the second album. To your point, you probably had the best singer of his generation, no question. And then you had Jakey Lee. I mean, that's a super group, right?
You know, I would be on stage with that band, and we'd be playing somewhere, and I'd say, God, can you believe it? I'm in the best band in the world. Yep. And that was my opinion. There were a lot of great bands out at that point. The one thing about Badlands is when Jake and I would talk before even he left Ozzy, and he'd say, I'm going to do this very 70s eclectic draw from a bunch of different influences. Maybe it'll be jazzy, maybe it'll be bluesy. And are you interested in that? And I'd say, oh yeah, sure. Cause I like all that stuff too. A lot of other bands came out the same time and were in theory going to do this very raw bluesy thing, and they didn't. We did, and we stuck to our guns. And, you know, other than say like the Black Crowes, who were also doing this kind of Faces Humble Pie thing, there weren't a whole lot of bands that were trying to do it as authentic as we were doing it. And I was proud of that. It was never about how many records are we going to sell. It was about, can we make a great record? I never became a musician to be a rock star. I became a musician because it was the next step in the evolution of my competitive life. I was a jock growing up. I became a musician. I kind of approached being a musician the same way you would a sporting event. I still do. Yep. So it's just something I try to do to the best of my ability every time, like going up to the plate to hit. I want to have the best at bat I can have every time. It's the same way it is for me in a band. I wanted the respect of my peers. If I had the choice between being in some other band that was more glammy, where I had to dumb down my bass playing and we were going to make $1 million, I'd rather be in Badlands, because I got to be who I am and I got to play the way I wanted to play. I got to play great music that Jake and the rest of us wrote, and I got to play with great players. So, I mean, did I make a lot of money? I made some money for a few years, but I mean, do I get big royalty checks every year? No. And I don't even care. I'm happy because Badlands, like you said, people hold it in a very high regard, and I'm happy with that.
Well, I think what resonated with a lot of people too, and obviously what was kind of going on a couple of years before you guys, and then kind of, we knew what happened with the Seattle thing. But you guys, I mean, you look badass too. I mean, your image you didn't, the hair wasn't up high. You guys all had long hair. You look like you could, hold your own in a bar fight, but then you get up there and, and you got the chops. And I just think it was like the entire thing that people were they had enough of the glam. They weren't ready for the flannel, and you guys kind of sandwiched in there for a short period of time. And I think that's what resonated with the audience.
I think a lot of people realized how authentic and real it was. I mean, Jake always said a band to him was like a gang, and you defend your gang. And I think that Badlands kind of fit that particular mold, as far as what you see is what you get. We weren't wearing a bunch of glammy clothes. I mean, I'm wearing a cowboy hat with cowboy boots. Other guys were doing it at that time too, but people would always say, man, you look like an actual real cowboy.
Yep.
And Ray would always introduce me as the Marlboro Man. And he goes, on bass, the Marlboro Man, blah, blah, blah. And so because of the way Jake is on stage, probably him and Eddie Van Halen, the two best guitar players ever on stage.
No question. I remember seeing there was an Aussie concert, and I want to say it was like 84. Bark at the Moon hadn't come out yet, and his solo was cool, but he was doing this thing kind of walking backwards up the stairs as he was solo. And I just remember going, the guy looked cool. He plays great. He's got big shoes to fill, and he's bringing it. And it was just really good when he got out of that band to see him land on his feet and do something else.
Jake's vibe on stage is not something that he tries to do. That's what he feels while he's playing. And the same with Ray. There was no pretense to what we did. And even with me, I mean, it's funny because we went to Japan to play first. And I always wear a cowboy hat. I'm a big vintage ZZ Top fan. So I would always wear a cowboy hat, but I wouldn't wear it on stage. And so we did like a half dozen shows in Japan. And I was running all over here and jumping up and down and doing what I thought I was supposed to do there. And it was very, fake. And I was tired. Yep. And after about 4 shows, Jake said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm doing what I thought you wanted." He goes, "I don't want any of that." He goes, "I want you just to be there and be cool. Be yourself. Don't try to be somebody else. Do your thing, kind of Richie Blackmore, less is more as far as the stage movements. But when you do something, make it count. And by the way, put a cowboy hat on. You wear the damn thing all the time. Wear it on stage. We're Badlands. Be who you are." And I went, "Oh, okay. Well, okay, I'm cool with that. And besides that, I'm freaking tired of this running around thing." So it kind of developed itself where the pretentious one in the band, the fake one, was me. And Jake realized that I never got a lot of input from him. And and that's kind of the way he is. It's kind of like, do your own thing. And if he has to say something, he would. Well, after about 3 or 4 shows, he calmed me down. If you ever see a Japanese video from that first tour, I look like a lunatic. I'm running all over the place. And then all of a sudden, like on the 5th show, I turned into me. And so the cowboy hat was a great image to have, because when you're in a band with Jake and Ray, you can be overlooked. So even if you didn't know my name, it'd be like, oh, there's the dude with the cowboy hat from Badlands. So it gave me an identity, which I still do to this day. And, it just allowed all of us to be who we really are. And it worked out good. I mean, like I said, I'm very proud of what we did. I would rather have done that than been in any LA band from the time. And I like a lot of those bands. I have friends in a lot of those bands. But Badlands, to me, was like the real deal.
So I'm going to be respectful of your time. There's 2 more things I want to cover. The last thing, or the second last thing. So you and I chatted beforehand. We're not going to talk about, what happened with Ray, other than there was an awful lot of people out here that were singers that were huge fans of the man. I was asked by a friend of mine, ask Greg, if there's one thing that somebody could say about Ray Gillen that might not have been in the press, that might not have been known, what might that be? And I don't know if it's a cheesy question. I was asked to ask it, so I'm going to ask it.
I'm going to tell you, Ray was a very unique guy. He could make you feel like when you first met him that you were his best friend, and it wasn't fake. He was just that guy. He was that nice of a guy. And so he was a very hard worker, little known fact, great athlete, better basketball player than me, and not as good of a baseball player. But here's the thing about Ray. Every time we rehearsed, every song, every take, every riff that Jake was writing at the time or that we were working on, Ray sang every single time. Every time in the studio, he sang every take, even if it was a practice take and it wasn't, we're just doing bass and drums. He sang every sound check. He always sang. I have never met another singer like that ever, that sings every single time. Even if he didn't have words, he's just kind of syllabalizing, making up a melody line, figuring out where he wants to go. He was always writing, had a big book that he was always writing in and getting influences from. So from that perspective, and I played in a lot of bands where the singer doesn't sing at all at rehearsal. Well, not Ray. Ray sang every single time. It really was, I can't overemphasize that it was really a musical marriage made in heaven from the musical perspective of it. I mean, it was just such a unique, Ray's vibe was so different than anyone else. He was like a real guy. He wasn't a poser. And then you get Jake, again, a very real person. Me, I'm what you see is what you get, and then even with Eric, I know Eric gets a lot of crap for being in KISS, but it's a job, it's a payday. He gets paid. And Jeff was a real person too. So, I mean, Ray fit right in there with the rest of us. And if we were doing work, Ray was doing work. And I admire that.
Amazing. I want to end with this, and hopefully this is going to work out. And if it doesn't, no pressure. You have, without a doubt, one of the most badass dogs. I kind of became friends with you when he was a puppy, and you've been kind of, I can't believe, how big he's got, but how big he's going to still get.
He weighs about 110 pounds right now. His breed is, he's called a Dog de Bordeaux, and it's a French Mastiff, like Turner and Hooch. And the reason I took my cowboy hat off is when he sees it, he'll freak out and try to chew on it. He's not used to seeing me wear it. But his name is Cheney, and he's named after a Charles Bronson character in the movie Hard Times. Charles Bronson's character is named Cheney. Come in here, Cheney. Come on. Come on up here. Oh, here he comes. Come over here. Get him up here. Come up here. Come on. You can come up. Come on up. Come on. Okay, hold on. I'm going to move this. Oh, there he is.
Fella.
There he is. He's 9.5 months old. What are you going to do? Here we go. Look up there. He's 9.5 months old, weighs about 110 pounds. He's just lovable and intimidating at the same time. What are you doing over here?
And he's got the bluest eyes I've ever seen.
It's funny, when they're born, they have blue eyes, and then they eventually turn to kind of an amber, which is what his eyes are right now. Let me see. There he is right there. And he doesn't get on the couch much. So he's pretty, if you can tell, Cheney, look up. We're related. He looks just like me.
Yeah.
He's
beautiful.
Look, can you tell the difference? My twin brother.
I mean, it's funny, some of the pictures that you just, I don't know if you follow around with the camera, but you just seem to get some of the funniest pictures of, I mean, he's a character, man. He is. Yeah. So
it's funny because he's the sixth one we've owned. We've been owning them since the late 80s Badlands days. But we had a bulldog that just passed away and about 3 months ago. And Cheney has kind of taken place. We would be miserable without our bulldog, Hemi. But Cheney has kind of been a nice fill-in for that, especially for our daughter. This is like our daughter's his best friend. So he annoys the crap out of her nonstop, but he's having a good time here right now because he's getting to sit on the. He wants to eat the computer now. So there you go.
Well,
so there you have it,
my friend. Thank you so much for doing it. It was great to finally meet you. We've been texting like madmen the last month or so, but great to finally meet you. I hope, my plan is now that all this nonsense is done, I get to get out and see some shows. So hopefully I get to see your band play really soon.
Well, hopefully we will get to play. I'll tell your listeners this much. Atomic Kings will be out the end of summer. You can find us on Facebook. We have a Atomic Kings page, and we also have an Instagram page. So if you're interested, some of the videos that we were talking about are on the page, and you can kind of see what we sound like and make up your own mind whether it's something you would be interested in. A lot of people seem to resonate with what, it resonates with what people are looking for. I get to hear about a lot of this real thing. You guys are so real. That's what's kind of missing. And I don't know if it is or not. I know there's other bands that are doing it, but it comes from the heart and it comes from a real place. So if you can check it out, great. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to yak on your show for a while.
I share every one of them, my friend. I really like them. Can't wait for that album to come out.
Cool.
Pleasure talking with you. Thanks so much for your time. All the best to your wife. She did a great job setting you up.
Oh, thank you.
She made you look fantastic. We had zero glitches. It was great. You're a Montana fan. I don't know what else we can do that this interview couldn't have gone better. It's just. Well,
my wife and I's 40th anniversary of being together is coming up on the 21st. We'll have been married 32 years, but she only has one fault, and I'm it.
Fair enough. And on that note, great chatting with you, sir.
All right, brother.
You have yourself a great night, and thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye for now.